Hi, I'm Sylvia. She said it so softly I almost didn't hear her. Mommy, if I sit down, my private part will hurt. That moment, that tiny whisper from my 6-year-old daughter, cracked something wide open. We were at Thanksgiving dinner, surrounded by family, and everyone rolled their eyes like Naomi was just being dramatic. But I knew better. I'd seen how she flinched when someone brushed her shoulder, how she slept in her sneakers like she was waiting to run. They thought family ties could smother the truth, but then I saw her drawing. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone while dialing 911. What happened next shattered everything I thought I knew about family. Before we dive into this story, the one that still wakes me in the middle of the night, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, what time it is. I read every word. Thanksgiving was never supposed to feel like a trial, but the second Naomi and I stepped onto Mama's porch, I felt a judgment waiting. The porch light buzzed and flickered, catching the frost in the air. For a second, I wondered if it would hurt less to turn around than to walk through that door. But Naomi, clutching her stuffed raccoon, looked up and whispered, "It smells like pie in there, Mommy." That was enough. Years had passed since I brought a dish to that house. The wallpaper was still the same pale yellow, peeling at the edges like it, too, was tired of pretending. But everything felt smaller, meaner, like the walls had heard too many lies and turned cold. Mama's hug was brief, her perfume powdery and distant. "You look tired, Sylvia. Long drive?" she said. What she meant was, "Don't cause a scene." Callista, my sister, floated through the dining room, arranging crystal like she was hosting royalty. Her smile barely touched her lips. The kind people give telemarketers before hanging up. I tried to ignore the chill. Naomi scanned the room, a blur of unfamiliar faces. Uncle Marcus laughed too loud. Grandma Vera bossed everyone into their seats. Cousin June darted past, chasing a gravy boat. Naomi squeezed my hand. Our secret signal, stay close. We gathered around the long cedar table, the one Daddy sanded by hand before he passed. 100 blessings had been whispered over that wood, but tonight it looked tired, wounded. They asked Naomi to sit with the two younger cousins at the far end. She hesitated, tugging at her sweater. I gently pulled her chair out, but she leaned into me instead. "What's wrong, baby?" She barely breathed her reply. "If I sit down, my private part will hurt." The words were so fragile, but they cracked through the room like thunder. Everything slowed. My fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the plate. Uncle Marcus chuckled. "Drama runs in that side of the family," he said, waving a buttery roll like a judge's gavel. Mama cleared her throat. "Naomi, manners. Sit up straight. Sylvia, she needs firmer boundaries." And just like that, they all went back to passing dishes, as if a 6-year-old hadn't just detonated a grenade at their perfect little table. I knelt beside Naomi, my hands damp. "Sweetheart, does something hurt right now?" She nodded. Silent tears filled her eyes. "We're going to the bathroom, okay?" No one offered to help. Plates clinked. Someone blessed the cranberry sauce. I led Naomi down the hall, feeling every stare sting like pins in my back. Behind the locked bathroom door, the lavender soap couldn't cover my fear. Naomi flinched as I helped her remove her tights. And there it was, redness along her inner thigh. The kind no child gets from the playground. A bitter taste flooded my mouth. I'd spent 2 years volunteering at a women's shelter. I knew what I was seeing. I just never imagined it would be my child. Naomi looked up at me, eyes searching. "Did I do something bad?" "No, baby. You did nothing wrong." I pulled her close, matching her breathing until my own stopped shaking. Back in the hallway, Mama blocked the way. "Is this necessary?" she hissed. "Dinner's getting cold." "Naomi isn't well. We're stepping out," I said, my voice steady as steel. Callista rolled her eyes. Marcus sipped his wine, smirking. I tucked Naomi into the guest room and handed her the raccoon. "Squeeze him if you get scared. I'll be right outside." She nodded, cheeks red with shame. Outside, the cold bit through my sweater as I stood on the porch and called 911. My hands shook, but I didn't let myself cry. Dispatchers need clarity, not chaos. When the operator picked up, I forced the words through the rust in my throat. "I think something's been happening to my daughter." The engines were loud before I saw them. Blue lights danced across Mama's shutters like restless stars. The first cruiser eased to the curb. An ambulance followed. 2 officers stepped onto the porch. An EMT slung a red bag over her shoulder. I nodded toward the house. Mama yanked open the front door before anyone could knock. "Did someone pass out?" she asked, frowning. "Sylvia, what have you done?" I barely found the words. "My daughter needs a medical exam. She's in the guest room." Mama's lips twitched, annoyed, not worried, but she stepped aside. The smell of turkey and sage hit us as we entered. The living room erupted the second uniforms were spotted. Callista rushed over. "You're making a scene," she hissed, her jaw so tight it quivered. Marcus shook his head. "See what happens when unstable people have kids." I didn't even blink. The EMT knelt beside Naomi, who sat on the bed clutching her raccoon. She spoke softly, asked permission. Naomi nodded. They disappeared into the bathroom. The hallway filled with relatives. Questions buzzed like gnats. "Is she sick? Did she fall? Is this about how she acted at dinner?" I didn't answer. My eyes were fixed on the bathroom door, willing it to open, fearing what would follow. The clock ticked too loud, accusing. Finally, the EMT emerged, her face pale. She pulled me aside. She confirmed. "There's been contact, repeatedly." I braced myself against the counter. Who? A pause. "Your brother-in-law." The world spun, then settled into a colder place. Rage surged like fire, but I stood tall. "Thank you," I whispered. "Please stay with her." The officers turned toward Marcus. That's when the chaos truly began. Mama stepped in front of them. "This is ridiculous. Marcus would never—" Callista clawed at my arm. "You're tearing this family apart." Marcus threw his hands up. "I didn't do anything. The kid's confused." The officer remained calm, voice steady, reading Marcus his rights. The sound of handcuffs, sharp and metallic, rang through the room. Grandma gasped. Cousin June began to cry. Naomi peeked from the bedroom, her face blotched with worry. I knelt in front of her. "You did the right thing," I said softly. "Mommy believes you. You're safe now." Her hand curled into mine. I was scared to tell. "I know," I said, swallowing my own fear. "But you're not alone anymore." They led Marcus down the hallway. The door opened. Cold wind scattered the scent of dinner. He glared at me, something between a threat and a plea, before disappearing into the flashing dark. Mama stood at the doorframe, arms crossed. Her voice was ice. "I'll never forgive you for this." She meant it, but I wasn't listening to her anymore. I was focused on buckling Naomi into the ambulance seat, on protecting the only thing that still mattered. The ambulance ride was short, but every second felt like a lifetime. Naomi didn't say a word. She clutched her raccoon tight, eyes wide but dry. The EMT handed me a pamphlet about trauma response, but my hands were shaking so hard the paper blurred. I held on to it anyway, as if some part of me believed words on a page could fix this. The children's hospital was quiet, sterile, humming with low voices and soft beeps. A nurse brought Naomi a juice box. I filled out forms with mechanical precision. The questions blurred together. Age, symptoms, medications, insurance. I couldn't focus on the pen in my hand. I kept glancing at Naomi. She still hadn't spoken. By the time I gave a full statement to the detectives, the sky outside had shifted from black to the palest shade of dawn. When we returned to our little duplex, I half expected everything to look different, like the world should know what just happened. But nothing had changed. 7 days crawled by after that night. Not a single call from Mama, no text from Callista. Not even a sad emoji on my post explaining Naomi's sudden absence from school. I tried calling. Mama's number was blocked. Callista's voicemail was full. Even Pastor Jenkins reached out with a syrupy message, suggesting grace and quietly hinting I stop attending the women's group until things settle. Settle. As if what happened to Naomi was just a misunderstanding that needed time to smooth over. Inside our duplex, the silence wasn't comforting. It buzzed. The refrigerator hum grew louder. The floorboards creaked more often. I checked the locks twice every night, then a third time before I dared sleep. Naomi still crawled into my bed after midnight, her fingers curled around the edge of my shirt, anchoring herself to me as if I might vanish in my sleep. She didn't talk about it. I didn't press. One Tuesday morning, she sat cross-legged at the kitchen table. She stared at her chair like it was a trap. "Is it okay to sit now?" she whispered. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes, sweetheart, I'll put a pillow down." She perched on the edge, stiff as a sparrow, ate her cereal without looking up, but she ate. That was something. The next day, midway through a pile of casework at my office, my phone rang. The caller ID read Harmony Elementary. My pulse stuttered. "Ms. Duncan," came the voice of Mrs. Vera, Naomi's teacher. "Nothing urgent. She's fine. But I'd appreciate it if you could come in this afternoon. It's about a drawing Naomi made." Her tone was gentle but layered, that professional voice people use when they're trying not to scare you. I arrived at the school at 3:30, heart hammering. The hallway smelled like pencil shavings and soap. Bulletin boards were plastered with stick turkeys and "I'm thankful for" lists. Normal childhood stuff. For a second, I envied the parents whose biggest worry was gluten in the cafeteria. Mrs. Vera sat behind her desk. Her mouth was pressed in a thin line. A sheet of red construction paper sat in front of her. She slid it toward me. "Naomi told me I could show you." It was a drawing. A chair. My mother's antique dining chair. Naomi had drawn sharp spikes jutting from the seat. Crimson crayon lines dripped down like blood. A stick girl sat crying above it, huge blue tears streaking down. Off to the side was a dark figure with jagged teeth, and above it all, in shaky handwriting, "Grandma's chair." Mrs. Vera folded her hands. She said it hurt. Those were her exact words. She looked at me with soft but firm eyes. "I'm mandated to report. Our counselors already contacted Child Protective Services." Guilt hit like a punch. I gripped the desk to stay upright. How many Thanksgiving dinners had I praised Naomi for sitting nicely in that cursed chair? I thanked the teacher and left. That evening, CPS called. The caseworker's voice was polite, efficient. She asked for the medical files, the police report. I sent them between bites of microwaved mac and cheese. Naomi colored quietly beside me, flipping through a photo album she'd pulled from the bookshelf. On the coffee table sat an old photo from last Christmas. Naomi had placed a neon star sticker over Uncle Ben's face, Callista's bachelor brother, the one who always brought magic tricks and extra candy. My stomach turned, a quiet alarm in my chest. That night, I read her Goodnight Moon and added a verse from her favorite hymn. I tucked her quilt high under her chin. Candlelight from her nightlight painted soft, swaying ovals on the wall. As I stroked her hair, her eyelids fluttered. Then she spoke. "You promised I never have to go back there." My voice cracked. "I meant it, baby. Never again." She nodded, sleepy, but right before drifting off, she whispered, "There's something I didn't tell you yet about the game he played with me." My chest tightened. I kissed her forehead. "We'll talk in the morning, okay?" She gave the tiniest nod, already slipping into dreams. But that word, game, echoed like thunder. I sat on the edge of her mattress for an hour, watched her breathe. When her rhythm settled, I gathered her drawings and tiptoed out. The night was too big. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sit still. Just past midnight, I heard soft steps down the hall. "I can't sleep unless you hold me," Naomi whispered. I carried her to the rocking chair, wrapped us in a quilt. That's when she told me. "Uncle Marcus liked the quiet game," she began. "If I sat really still and didn't make a sound, I was a winner." I kept my voice level. "What happened if you moved?" "He'd press my legs down. Sometimes he pinched. If I cried, I had to start over." Her small fingers twisted the quilt. "He said good girls don't fidget." My stomach flipped. Horizontal moonlight lined the floor. "Did anyone else know about the game?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Grandma saw once. She said I was being difficult." When she finally fell asleep again, I slipped into the bathroom, locked the door, and broke. My sobs were raw. I stuffed my face into a towel to muffle the sound. I shook from guilt, from rage, from the memory of being in that kitchen, smiling, pouring tea, while my daughter was silently surviving. By morning, I had my breath back. Barely. At 8 o'clock sharp, I called our caseworker, Julie. Naomi disclosed additional abuse last night, I told her. Details. Frequency. Her tone shifted. We'll schedule a forensic interview this afternoon. Can you get her to Riverstone Advocacy by 2? She paused. Given the escalation, we may arrange emergency protective measures. For both of you. I thanked her. Hung up. Exhaled through clenched teeth. The line had been drawn. We were going to war. Riverstone Advocacy was tucked into an old ranch-style house painted calming teal, the kind of place designed to feel soft, like a home, even when everything inside it hurts. Naomi clutched her raccoon as we walked in. Toys lined the waiting room shelves, but she ignored them. Instead, she sat in the corner, quietly braiding and unbraiding the raccoon's tail. Through a one-way mirror, I watched her forensic interview begin. The therapist introduced herself, offered a juice box, and asked about the games Naomi liked to play with her family. Naomi's voice floated into the observation room through the speakers, clear, polite, heartbreakingly matter-of-fact. She described the red chair, the imagined spikes, the rule of silence. Uncle Marcus said if I told, Mommy would be taken away, she said, like she was reciting spelling words. Each sentence landed like a nail. At one point, she lifted the hem of her dress to show faint bruises, ones the ER had missed. The therapist's eyes welled, but her voice remained calm, soothing. 40 minutes passed in a blur. Julie met me in a side office afterward, folders in hand. We're opening a formal investigation into Marcus, she said. A temporary restraining order will be filed today. She tapped a stack of documents. Naomi qualifies for trauma-focused counseling. We'll get you a schedule. Gratitude and dread mingled in my chest like oil and water. I signed the papers, each letter of my name deliberate, carved with resolve. When we stepped back outside, the autumn sun felt wrong, too bright, too warm. People in the parking lot laughed. Someone juggled coffee cups. It was like the world hadn't noticed that mine had cracked. Back home, I collapsed on the couch. Naomi was already there, curled up with a blanket. She'd fallen asleep mid-coloring. Her newest drawing showed a little girl standing tall, holding a shield. On the shield, in big, blocky letters, she had written, Aunt Sylvia. I knelt down, resting my forehead against hers. This time, I whispered, no one's going to silence you. That night, I stayed up late printing forms, sorting case notes, scanning drawings. Naomi slept peacefully. I left the hallway light on. At dawn, we left for the courthouse. As I pulled out of the driveway, Naomi reached across the console. Her fingers found my pinky, hooked around it, and held on. Then, barely a whisper, is this what bravery feels like? I looked over, eyes wet, and nodded. It feels like breathing when the air is thin, but we're breathing together. She gave a tiny smile. The courthouse was quiet, all marble and echo. Naomi's cardigan was buttoned to the top. Her backpack slung across her shoulder like armor. I knelt, straightened her hair clip. Truth isn't rude, I said. It's just loud enough to be heard. She nodded. We walked inside. Courtroom 4B smelled like lemon polish and old books. We sat at the petitioner's table. Marcia, our legal advocate, gave me a steady glance as she slid our packet of evidence into order. Then the door opened behind us. Naomi's mother swept in first. Heels too loud, face too smooth. Behind her came Grandma, dressed in charcoal gray, lips pinched, and trailing both of them, a man I didn't recognize, mid-40s, gray blazer, sharp eyes, leather briefcase. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Harold adjusted his glasses. Ms. Duncan, you're requesting emergency guardianship of Naomi Rollins. Ms. Rollins, you filed a counterpetition requesting a full custody evaluation. He turned to the man beside Callista. And you've provided expert testimony? Callista stood. Yes, Your Honor. This is Dr. Randall Kane, licensed therapist. He's reviewed Sylvia's behavior and will speak to concerns regarding her mental fitness. The man stood, straightening imaginary wrinkles from his blazer. I've reviewed her social media, volunteer history, and recent behavior, he began. There is evidence of a savior complex, projected trauma. She's instilling narratives in the child, ones not grounded in fact. He flipped a page dramatically. In my professional opinion, Naomi may be adopting false beliefs to mirror Sylvia's emotional needs. My knuckles turned white. Marcia didn't flinch. She simply slid a note toward me. Not licensed in Kentucky. When it was our turn, Marcia stood calmly. Your Honor, we submit Exhibit A. She played the audio recording from Naomi's school tablet. The courtroom fell into silence. Naomi's voice trembled. But it hurts. Then Callista's reply. Cold, sharp. Then stop acting like a brat. A crack. Flesh meeting flesh. Then Naomi's sobs. A gasp rippled through the gallery. The judge's jaw clenched. Marcia continued, steady as stone. Exhibit B. Documentation from the Nevada Board of Behavioral Health. Dr. Kane's license was suspended in 2021 for unethical diagnostic practices. She turned to the witness stand. Dr. Kane, are you currently licensed in Kentucky? He faltered. My application is pending. Marcia nodded. No further questions. Judge Harold tapped his gavel. I've heard enough. The room stilled. Temporary emergency custody is granted to Sylvia Duncan, effective immediately. A criminal investigation into Marcus Rollins is ongoing. A no-contact order is issued against Callista Rollins and Mrs. Green until further review. Callista's mouth parted in disbelief. Grandma reached for her arm, but Callista shook her off. Her lips curled with something between rage and betrayal. Outside the courtroom, sunlight spilled across the long hallway. Naomi climbed onto the bench beside me, tucking her head into my side. Can I go home now? She asked, voice soft but steady. I kissed the top of her head. We're building a new one, just for you. 2 weeks later, that moment still flickers in my memory like a candle in the dark. Our new rental is small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, but every wall is freshly painted. Every door swings open without force. Each morning, I wake to the scent of maple syrup and the slap of Naomi's bare feet on the hardwood floor. She lines up her sneakers by the front door. Double knots. It's the first thing she does when she comes inside, proof that she no longer expects to leave in a hurry. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. Therapy. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Half days at school. Evenings. Soup, cartoons, seed planting in the backyard. The sunflowers are still small, just green shoots in the dirt. But Naomi says the fence looks happier with flowers near it. Then, one quiet Thursday, she stepped out of her room holding a sheet of paper. Look, she said, it was a list. Me, brown loops of hair. Naomi, smiling stick figure. Grandpa, gray curls, guitar. Uncle Ben, boxed in, sharp teeth, angry eyes. My stomach flipped. Uncle Ben, Callista's brother, the one who brought magic tricks. Candy, the one Naomi always liked. He'd never been on the radar, never in the reports, never questioned. Honey, I asked gently, why is Uncle Ben in a box? Her eyes dropped. That's my room, at Grandma's. He used to come in after the game. A pause. I didn't want to make trouble. I snapped a photo of the drawing and sent it to Detective Luring before I could second-guess myself. He called within 10 minutes. We missed him, he said, voice clipped. But we won't miss again. I'm sending a team. 5 days later, Uncle Ben was in custody. 2 other minors had corroborated Naomi's story. Callista gave a statement. I always thought something was off, but family comes first. That night, I found Naomi outside, watering the tiny sunflowers. She was humming, off-key, confident. I sat beside her, watching dirt darken beneath the jug of water. They grow slow, she said, but they're big when they're ready. I tugged gently on the brim of her straw hat, just like you. The next day, the mailbox squeaked. A cream envelope peeked out, addressed in my mother's careful cursive. My pulse fluttered as I carried it inside. I hesitated before opening it, afraid of what might be inside, or worse, nothing at all. But I unfolded the paper and read, "Sylvia, I was wrong. I wanted to believe the stories were lies because the truth hurt more. I will testify. I'm sorry I let silence speak for me." Mom. I read it aloud at the kitchen table while Naomi colored a castle. She paused, listening quietly. When I finished, she set her crayon down. "I want to stay here," she said, simple as a fact. I smoothed the letter against the table. "You will." Later, after the dishes were stacked and the nightlight cast its gentle glow, Naomi crawled onto the couch beside me. We split a plate of leftover banana pancakes, her idea of dessert. She leaned against my arm and let out a sigh so light it barely made a sound. I thought back to every siren, every slammed door. Every night, I stayed up counting her breaths to make sure she was still safe. Once upon a time, I believed rescue looked like flashing lights, courtrooms, urgent declarations. But real rescue is quieter. It's a child sleeping through the night, a pair of shoes by the door, pancakes at dinner because no one's watching the clock. Naomi yawned, then pushed her plate aside. "Does this mean I'm safe now?" I pulled the knit blanket over us and kissed the crown of her head. "No, baby. It means you're home." The next morning felt like any other, until it didn't. While Naomi got ready for school, I tidied the living room. Her backpack sat by the door, slightly unzipped. I reached to close it and noticed a thick, crumpled paper wedged between her spiral notebooks, folded like it had been hidden in a rush. I sat at the table and carefully flattened it out. It was another drawing. A little girl sat alone on a bench, legs apart. Jagged red crayon streaks covered the area between her waist and thighs. Behind her loomed a stick figure, tall, broad-shouldered, labeled in uneven letters, Uncle R. Off to the side, two other stick people stood turned away. One labeled Mom, the other Grandma, both facing the other direction, watching nothing. My breath caught. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Then footsteps. Naomi stood in the doorway holding her forgotten lunchbox. She saw the drawing on the table, then my face. Her eyes went wide, and then she crumpled. "I'm sorry," she cried, voice cracking. "I didn't mean to draw it. I didn't know how else to say it." I went to her, wrapped my arms around her as tightly as I dared. "You don't ever have to be sorry," I whispered. "You're brave, and you're not alone. I believe you. I'm not going anywhere." That afternoon, I picked her up early. I walked into the school office and asked to speak with Miss Wheeler, the counselor. She greeted us gently, the crease between her brows deepening as I handed her the folded drawing. Naomi sat beside me, quiet but watchful. Miss Wheeler adjusted her glasses, studied the picture. Then, in a tone so careful it barely rustled the air, she said, "Sweetheart, did you draw this?" Naomi nodded once. Miss Wheeler didn't say another word. She got up, locked her office door, and returned to her chair. "This is going up the chain." Within the hour, Harmony Elementary filed another report with CPS. I waited in the hallway outside while the school principal, Mr. Calder, came down to meet me. I barely knew the man, but he shook my hand and looked me in the eye. "Miss Taylor," he said, "whatever you need from us, we'll stand with Naomi. Just tell us how to help." It was the first time since this began that someone outside our little circle said those words. That evening, Naomi was quiet. She stared out the car window the entire drive home, her thumb tucked beneath her chin like she was 5 again. I didn't try to fill the silence. I just kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting lightly on her knee. Dinner was simple, soup and crackers. She didn't talk much, but she ate. That alone felt like a victory. Later, as I rinsed the dishes, she patted into my bedroom doorway. "Can I sleep with you tonight?" I nodded and pulled back the covers. She climbed in beside me, curled like a comma, hands clutching the blanket near my shoulder. The room was dark, save for the hum of the heater and the rhythm of our breathing. Then, just above a whisper, she asked, "Do you think they'll believe me this time?" I turned to her, smoothed her hair, but I didn't answer. Because I finally understood, Naomi wasn't just afraid. She was tired. Tired of being doubted. Tired of pretending. Tired of trying to find new ways to say what no child should have to say at all. I didn't sleep much that night. Naomi's hand curled around my wrist as if she feared I'd disappear. Her question echoed over and over. Do you think they'll believe me this time? It sliced deeper than anything anyone had ever said to me in a courtroom. The next morning, while I was making eggs, my phone vibrated on the counter. It was Miss Wheeler. Ms. Green, she said gently, you may want to come in. Naomi left her school tablet in the reading nook. I opened it to charge it and found a recording. She paused. It might have been an accident, or maybe not. But either way, I think you'll want to hear it. My chest tightened. My stomach dropped. I'll be there in 20, I said. I dropped Naomi off at school myself, kissed her forehead, and promised I'd see her later. She didn't smile, but her eyes stayed on me a little longer than usual. Not relief, exactly. More like waiting. As soon as I was alone, I parked behind the school library, rolled up the windows, and powered on the tablet. Miss Wheeler had left it for me, the file already queued up. For a few seconds, there was only static, the sound of sheets shifting, soft footsteps. Then came the voices. A woman, sharp, tired. Don't let her say too much at school. Another voice, older, clipped and cold. She needs to learn. If she keeps flapping her mouth about that man, he'll end up in jail. And then we all lose. I knew those voices. Naomi's mother, her grandmother. I didn't realize I was clutching the steering wheel until the pain in my knuckles hit me. Then, Naomi's voice. Soft, cracking. But it hurts. A pause. Then the snap of a hand striking skin. Then maybe stop acting like a brat, her mother snapped. More rustling, muffled crying, then silence. I stared at the windshield, frozen, shaking, unable to breathe. I sat there for 10 minutes before I remembered what I needed to do. I opened the voice memo app on my phone, replayed the recording into the microphone, and saved it. Raw, unfiltered. Then I called Marcia Doyle, a legal advocate I'd worked with during my time at the women's shelter. She answered on the third ring. Sylvia, it's been a while. Everything okay? No, I said, flat. I have a minor under my care. I have a recording, emotional abuse, physical harm, witness coercion to protect a known abuser. I paused, my voice firm. I need to know what's possible, right now. Marcia didn't hesitate. Bring me the audio. We can file an emergency petition for protective custody. That's enough for a judge to grant a no-contact order today. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I'm going to court, I said, and I'm going to fight like hell. By the time I got home, Naomi was already there. School had let out early for a staff meeting. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her pencils scattered across the surface, quietly working. When she saw me walk in, she slid a piece of paper across the table without a word and looked up at me, searching, not for approval, but for safety. It was a drawing. This one was different. A little girl stood tall, straight-backed, in front of a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. In one hand, she held a shield. In blocky letters across the front, it read, Aunt Sylvia. I knelt beside her, leaned my forehead gently against hers. This time, I said softly, no one's going to silence you. That night, I stayed up organizing the evidence, printing forms, outlining every detail I could remember. Naomi fell asleep on the couch, the drawing still in her lap. I carried her to bed, tucked the quilt high under her chin, and left the hallway light on. At sunrise, we were already dressed and out the door. As I pulled out onto the road toward the courthouse, Naomi reached across the console again. Her fingers found my pinky and wrapped around it. Then, barely audible, she asked, Is this what bravery feels like? I looked at her, and for the first time in what felt like months, I let the tears come. The fog clung to the windshield as we eased into the courthouse parking lot. I squeezed her pinky gently in return. Bravery feels like breathing when the air is thin, I told her, but we'll breathe together. She gave a small nod. The blue cardigan I'd laid out for her the night before was buttoned all the way to the top. Inside, the marble floors echoed every footstep like a drumbeat. I could see her noticing it too, the scale of everything around her. I knelt and straightened her hair clip one last time, Truth isn't rude, I whispered. It's just loud enough to be heard. She pressed her lips together and followed me past the metal detector, chin high. We entered Judge Harold's courtroom. It smelled of lemon oil and old paper. We sat at the petitioner's table. Marcia, already waiting, gave me a small nod as I settled in beside her. Then the doors opened behind us. Callista strode in, her heels clicking like punctuation marks on the tile. Behind her came Grandma in a stiff gray suit, and trailing them was a man I didn't recognize. Trim gray blazer, neat beard, expensive briefcase. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Harold adjusted his glasses and looked down at the papers in front of him. Ms. Green, you're requesting emergency guardianship of Naomi Rollins, he said. Ms. Rollins, I see a counter-petition has been filed for a full custody evaluation. He glanced at the man beside Callista. You've brought expert testimony? Callista rose with rehearsed calm. Yes, Your Honor. This is Dr. Randall Kane, a licensed therapist. He's here to express concerns about Sylvia's mental stability and her influence over Naomi's perception of past events. Dr. Kane stood, clearing his throat like he was about to deliver a lecture. His voice was smooth, overly confident. I've reviewed Ms. Duncan's social media history, her volunteer patterns, and her behavior in recent weeks, he began. There's clear indication of an obsessive savior complex, projecting unresolved trauma onto those around her, particularly children in her care. He glanced toward the gallery, flipping through his papers with unnecessary flair. Such behavior often leads to suggestive influence over young minds. In my professional opinion, Naomi's current claims may be reflections of that dynamic rather than independent experiences. I said nothing, but under the table, my hands clenched into fists. Marcia didn't flinch. She slid a sheet of paper toward me, a handwritten note in sharp block letters, not licensed in Kentucky. When it was our turn, Marcia stood slowly, like a storm gathering just before the thunder. Your Honor, she said, her voice calm and unwavering, we submit Exhibit A. She pressed play. The courtroom fell silent. Naomi's small voice echoed across the room. But it hurts. Then the unmistakable reply, cold, sharp, unflinching. Then stop acting like a brat. A crack. Flesh meeting flesh. Naomi's cry. A ripple moved through the gallery. One woman gasped. The judge's mouth flattened into a thin line. Marcia turned the volume down. Exhibit B, she continued, is disciplinary documentation from the Nevada Board of Behavioral Health. Dr. Kane was sanctioned for unethical diagnoses and suspended from practice in that state. She turned to him. Dr. Kane, are you currently licensed in Kentucky? He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed. My application is pending, he finally muttered. No further questions, Marcia said, letting the silence finish the job. Judge Harold leaned back in his chair, visibly shaken. I've heard enough, he said, gavel in hand. Temporary emergency custody is granted to Sylvia Duncan, effective immediately. A criminal investigation into Marcus Rollins is ongoing. A no-contact order is hereby issued against Ms. Rollins and Mrs. Green until further notice. Callista's mouth opened, stunned. Her polished veneer cracked. She looked at me, her face hard, bewildered. She'd walked into this courtroom expecting to win. Grandma touched her elbow. Callista pulled away, eyes burning. As we exited the courtroom, sunlight streamed through the tall windows in golden bands. Naomi climbed onto a bench near the security checkpoint and leaned into my side. Reporters loitered at the exit, cameras dangling, but none approached. For a rare, beautiful moment, the hallway felt private, like we existed in our own world again. Naomi tucked her head beneath my chin. Can I go home now? She whispered. I kissed her hair. We're building a new one, I said. Just for you. 2 weeks later, we're still in that new rental. It's small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, but it's clean, bright, and quiet. Every wall has a fresh coat of paint. Every lock turns without effort. Every floorboard creaks like an old friend, not a threat. Naomi wakes up each morning to the smell of maple syrup and the sound of birds on the fence line. She lines her sneakers by the welcome mat, laces double knotted. It's her ritual now, her way of saying, "This is mine, I belong here." Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, art therapy. Tuesdays and Thursdays, half days at school, where she's slowly making friends again, trusting adults again. And in the evenings, we tend to our tiny garden in the backyard, just her and me and the sunflower starts. She says the flowers make the fence look happier. One quiet Thursday, she came out of her room with another drawing. A sheet of thick paper with 4 numbered stick figures. Me, hair in brown loops. Naomi, smiling, holding a raccoon. Grandpa, gray curls, strumming a guitar. Uncle Ben, inside a jagged rectangle, scowling. I froze. Uncle Ben. I hadn't thought of him since last Christmas. The bachelor brother with magic tricks and peppermint candy, the one who always sat too close. He was never part of the report, never on our radar. Sweetheart, I said carefully, why is Uncle Ben in a box? Naomi's eyes fell to the ground. That's my room, at Grandma's. He used to come in, after the game. She looked up slowly. I didn't want to make trouble. A slow, familiar pressure bloomed behind my eyes. I snapped a picture of the drawing. My hands trembled as I emailed it to Detective Loring. He called within minutes. We missed him, he said grimly. But we're not missing again. I'm sending a team. We'll be interviewing every child who attended those family dinners. 5 days later, he called back. Uncle Ben was in custody. 2 other minors had shared similar stories. Callista's statement? I always felt something was off, but family comes first. That night, Naomi and I sat on the patio, watering the garden. She hummed softly, fearless. They grow slow, she said, watching the soil darken. But they're big when they're ready. I nodded and tugged gently at the brim of her straw hat. Just like you. The next morning, the mailbox creaked again. Inside was another cream-colored envelope. My name. My mother's handwriting. I stood on the porch, envelope trembling in my fingers. For a long minute, I didn't open it, just stared at it like it might vanish if I blinked. When I finally did tear it open, the paper inside was neat, folded with precision. Sylvia, I was wrong. I wanted to believe the stories were lies because the truth hurt more. I will testify. I'm sorry I let silence speak for me. Mom. I read it aloud in the kitchen, my voice soft over the clink of cereal bowls. Naomi was at the table, coloring a castle, her brow furrowed in concentration. When I finished, she paused, set down her crayon. I want to stay here, she said. Simple, steady. You will, I promised. Later that evening, with the dishes done and the lights dim, Naomi curled beside me on the couch again. We shared banana pancakes for dessert, her idea. Her little head rested against my arm, and she let out a soft sigh, like she was finally exhaling after months of holding her breath. I looked at her, this brave little girl who had held the weight of so much without crumbling. My hand gently smoothed the curls at her temple. I thought back to every emergency room, every whispered confession. Every night I sat awake counting the rise and fall of her breath, like it was the only thing tethering me to the world. I used to think rescue was loud. Sirens, courtrooms, lawyers slamming binders on tables. But now I know better. Real rescue is quieter. It's a child sleeping soundly through the night. It's a shoe rack by the door with every pair in place. It's banana pancakes at 8 p.m. Because nobody's rushing to beat a clock. Naomi yawned, set her plate aside. Does this mean I'm safe now? I pulled the knitted blanket over us and kissed the top of her head. No, baby, I whispered. It means you're home. The next few days were quiet. Peaceful, almost. Naomi started humming again when she colored. She let herself be silly. She danced in her socks across the kitchen floor. The shadow in her eyes faded just a little more each morning. Then, one afternoon, a package arrived. Inside, a legal envelope. No return address. But I knew the tone, the formatting. I didn't have to open it to feel the punch coming. It was a custody petition. A formal one this time, filed by Callista. I stood in the kitchen, holding it like a live grenade. She wasn't giving up. Later that night, while Naomi was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I typed out an email to Anna Ramirez, my old college roommate, now a family attorney, with a reputation for leaving nothing on the table when it came to children's safety. I didn't hesitate. The next morning, she called. "I cleared space for you," she said. "Come in before lunch." Her office was crisp and quiet, lined with framed degrees and case files stacked in perfect rows. No small talk, just a nod toward the chair opposite her desk. "Tell me everything." So I did. Every whisper, every bruise, every time I doubted myself, or worse, believed someone else over my instincts. I showed her Naomi's drawings, the audio recording, the CPS reports. Then I handed her the new custody petition. Anna scanned it, her jaw tightening. "She's testing you," she said. "That's what people like this do. Push to see if you'll back down." I looked her dead in the eye. "I'm not backing down." She nodded. "Good, because this next part gets messy." As she explained how Callista still had legal parental rights, how, technically, Naomi was her daughter, that if she painted this as a misunderstanding, a family feud, she might get sympathy from a judge, that if we weren't careful, they could weaponize the system against me. But Anna's eyes sharpened. "If Naomi's in danger and we've documented every step, we can file for emergency guardianship. It's not easy, but it's possible." I swallowed hard. "And the rest of the family?" "They'll side with her," Anna said. "At first, but truth has a way of getting louder." My phone buzzed. A new message. It was from Callista. "Lunch tomorrow. Just us. Let's talk like grown women." Anna arched an eyebrow. "That's not a peace offering. That's a trap." "I know," I said, "but I'm going." The next day, I parked outside a neutral cafe halfway between our houses. Bright walls, quiet booths, the kind of place you'd go for a reconciliation or an ambush. Callista was already inside, sipping chamomile tea, like we were just sisters catching up. She stood when she saw me, arms wide. "Sylvie," she said with a too-sweet smile. "It's so good to see you." I didn't move, didn't smile. She sat back down and pretended not to notice the chill between us. "I just want to clear the air," she said, folding her napkin. "Naomi's confused. You know how kids are, imagination and all that. She's always been sensitive." I said nothing. Callista sighed, gentle, motherly, practiced. "I don't want this to tear us apart. We've always had each other, haven't we?" Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope, slid it across the table. "What's this?" I asked, already feeling the bile rise. "Just something to consider," she said lightly. "A compromise." I opened it. Inside, a draft custody filing, her intent to reclaim Naomi, and next to it, a mutual silence agreement. If I backed off, if I dropped the claims, they wouldn't pursue legal action. I stared at the papers. Every word another slap. "You're trying to trade her trauma for your reputation," I said, flat. "Don't be dramatic," she snapped, her mask slipping. "This is about keeping the peace." I met her eyes. Is that what he called it too? Keeping the peace while he played that sick game with her? Her lips tightened. "You're making this worse. If you keep going, we'll fight back, and we'll win." I placed the envelope gently back on the table. "No," I said. "You've already lost her. The only question is, what else are you willing to lose?" I stood, didn't look back. Outside, the wind tugged at my coat, cold, cleansing. I welcomed it. It kept me upright as the nausea rose, as the truth settled deeper into my bones. The next morning, Naomi was quiet again. She sat at the table, her cereal untouched. I asked about school, art club, her friends, just faint nods, shrugs, eyes down. Something was slipping again. After she left for class, I tidied the living room. Her bag was still by the door, unzipped. I bent to close it and noticed something folded inside. Another drawing. Crude, shaky, deliberate. A little girl on a bench, legs apart, jagged red crayon lines across her lower half. Behind her, a tall stick figure labeled Uncle R. Off to the side, two more stick figures, both turned away. Mom, Grandma, watching nothing. I stared at the drawing, frozen. It trembled in my hands. Then footsteps. Naomi stood in the doorway. She saw the picture, then my face. She broke. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I didn't mean to draw it. I just didn't know how else to say it." I went to her, held her tight, felt her little chest heaving against mine. "You don't have to be sorry," I whispered. "You never have to be sorry. You were brave. You said it. You're not alone." That afternoon, I signed her out of school early. We were done being quiet. That afternoon, I walked straight into Harmony Elementary's front office and asked to see Miss Wheeler again. She met us with a calm smile, but I could see the concern tightening around her eyes. I handed her the newest drawing. Naomi stood beside me, quiet but alert. Miss Wheeler studied the picture, her face unreadable. Then she turned to Naomi. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "did you draw this?" Naomi nodded, her hands clasped in front of her like she was waiting for punishment. Miss Wheeler didn't ask anything more. She stood, walked to the door, locked it, and sat back down. "This," she said, placing the paper carefully on her desk, "is going up the chain now." By the end of the hour, the school had filed a supplemental report with CPS. I sat in the hallway outside the counselor's office, my hands trembling in my lap. Principal Calder came down again and shook my hand. "Miss Taylor," he said, voice firm, "we're with Naomi. Just say the word." The drive home was nearly silent. Naomi sat in the back seat, staring out the window, one thumb pressed to her lips like a reflex from a younger time. I didn't fill the space with talk. I just kept one hand on the wheel, the other ready if she needed it. That evening, dinner was soup again. She didn't say much, but she ate. That was still something. Later, she appeared in the doorway of my bedroom. "Can I sleep with you tonight?" she asked, voice no louder than a breath. I nodded. She curled in beside me, her small body folding into mine like a question mark, seeking its answer. In the darkness, with only the hum of the heater to fill the quiet, she spoke. "Do you think they'll believe me this time?" I turned toward her, brushed her hair back from her forehead, but I didn't answer. Not right away, because I knew this wasn't just a question about court. It was about the world, about whether it would continue to punish her for being honest, for surviving. I didn't sleep much that night. Naomi stayed curled next to me, her fingers wrapped tight around my wrist, like she feared I'd vanish if she let go. Her whisper kept replaying in my head like a lullaby with no melody. "Do you think they'll believe me this time?" The next morning, I was flipping eggs in the kitchen when my phone buzzed. It was Miss Wheeler. "Miss Green," she said cautiously, "I think you need to come in." My pulse spiked. "Naomi's fine," she added quickly, "but she left her school tablet in the reading nook yesterday. When I went to charge it, there was a voice recording." She didn't need to elaborate. I was already grabbing my keys. I dropped Naomi off with a hug and a kiss. She didn't smile, but her eyes held something different that morning. Not relief, not fear. Just quiet observation. Like she was measuring the world's reaction to her very existence. Once alone in the car, I parked behind the school library, powered on the tablet, and opened the file. The audio began with faint rustling, sheets shifting, footsteps, then voices. One female, sharp, tired. "Don't let her say too much at school." Another voice, older, cold. "She needs to understand. If she keeps talking about that man, he'll go to jail, and we all lose." I knew those voices. Callista and my mother. I didn't even realize I was gripping the steering wheel until my hands went numb. Then Naomi's voice broke through, small and shaking. "But it hurts." Silence. Then a crack, flesh against flesh. "Then maybe stop acting like a brat," Callista snapped. More crying, a rustle, then silence again. My vision blurred. I sat there, numb, for 10 full minutes before I remembered how to breathe. Then I opened my phone's voice memo app, hit record, and replayed the file. No editing, no enhancements, just raw truth. Then I called Marcia Doyle. "Sylvia," she answered. "You okay?" "No," I said. "I have a recording. Emotional abuse, physical abuse, coercion, all on tape. What can we do?" There was no hesitation. "Bring it in. We'll file an emergency petition for protective custody. That's enough for a judge to issue a no-contact order." She paused. "We're going to court." I nodded to no one. Then we fight. That afternoon, I dropped the audio off with Marcia. When I returned home, Naomi was coloring at the kitchen table. She slid a drawing across to me without a word. This one was different. It showed her standing tall in front of a shadowy figure with red eyes. In one hand, she held that same shield. Across it, in bold, blocky handwriting, Aunt Sylvia. I knelt beside her, our foreheads touching. "This time," I said softly, "no one is going to silence you." That night, while she slept curled on the couch, I filed paperwork, copied evidence, organized every note and document into a binder. I printed every photo, every drawing. I cross-referenced every statement. In the morning, we were out the door before the sun rose. As we pulled onto the main road toward the courthouse, Naomi reached over, her fingers searching for mine. She hooked her pinky around mine and held tight. And then, just above a whisper, she asked, "Is this what bravery feels like?" I looked at her, eyes filling again, and nodded. We arrived early. The courthouse echoed with every step, each click of our shoes magnified. I could tell she noticed how small she must have felt in that vast marble space. I stopped, knelt one more time, and fixed the bow in her hair. "Truth isn't rude," I whispered. "It's just loud enough to be heard." She gave a firm nod. We walked in together. Inside the courtroom, Judge Harold called us forward. Marcia stood at my side. Naomi sat quietly behind us, hugging her raccoon. Callista entered, with Grandma trailing behind, and next to them, a new man. Expensive suit, wide smile, cold eyes, a new lawyer. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Harold reviewed the filings. He raised an eyebrow. "Miss Rollins, you're requesting full custody, and you've brought a witness?" "Yes, Your Honor," her lawyer said, standing. "We've brought Dr. Randall Kane to speak on concerns about Ms. Duncan's mental state." Kane took the stand. Again, same voice, same speech. "She exhibits savior tendencies, obsessive patterns, a need to create rescue scenarios." Marcia passed me a note, still not licensed in Kentucky. When it was our turn, she stood. "We submit new evidence," she said, "a recording made accidentally on a school tablet." She pressed play. The room held its breath. Naomi's voice, her mother's voice, my mother's. The slap, the sobs, gasps echoed across the courtroom. The judge's knuckles whitened on the bench. Marcia added calmly, "We also submit disciplinary records. Dr. Kane's license has been suspended in Nevada for unethical practices." She turned to Kane. "Are you licensed in Kentucky?" He stammered, "Pending. No further questions." The judge tapped his gavel. "I've heard enough." He looked at me. "Emergency guardianship is granted to Sylvia Duncan, effective immediately." He turned to Callista. "No contact order extended. Criminal investigation remains open." Callista's face drained of all color. Outside the courtroom, the sun was waiting for us. Naomi climbed up onto a bench by the window and leaned against me. "Can I go home now?" she asked. I kissed her forehead. "We're building a new one, just for you." 2 weeks later, our home is full of light. It's not big, but it's safe. Naomi wakes up smiling. She lines her sneakers by the mat. She sings while brushing her teeth. The sunflower starts have doubled in size. One afternoon, she hands me a drawing. 4 stick figures holding hands beneath a rainbow. She's drawn herself, me, Grandpa, and a raccoon. Below it, she's written, "My forever people." Later that night, we sit on the couch with leftover banana pancakes. She leans into me, yawns. "Does this mean I'm safe now?" she asks again. I pull the blanket over both of us. "No, baby," I whisper. "It means you're free."